Good morning and welcome to the Talking News for Saturday the 29th of January 2022. Having said that, I'm not quite sure where January has gone and I cannot believe that it's going to be February by the middle of next week. Certainly I feel that the evenings are getting lighter again and hopefully we're coming out the other side of the winter time. This week has been a very special day for one of our members of staff. We have Mr. Chris Kane with his birthday on Friday. However, what he probably doesn't want me to tell you is that he has reached the grand age of 60. I think we can all safely say you don't look a day over 59. Joking apart, happy birthday, Chris. So this week we had our stride. Once a month we have people gathering together with their guide dogs with one-on-one supervision to go on a long walk. Long is usually between 5 to 7 miles and the Striders group meet once a month. We always provide transport and it's the last Friday of the month. So if you're interested in joining or indeed volunteering as a sighted guide, please do not hesitate to let us know and we will include you in the group. This week has also seen a change in the regulations regarding face masks. These are now no longer compulsory as of Thursday. This said, we are asking all of our members and volunteers to remain courteous. As the government guidelines show, if you are in a confined space for a long period of time, it is still worth wearing a face mask to protect others. Very much hope that everybody is fit and well and look forward to speaking to you next week. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Site for Wight.
This is Chris, reading an article from On the Wight. Westridge Farm. Tenants farmer have no fight left, are broken and have simply had enough. The message from the holidays, the tenant farmers, explains that we as a family are broken and we have simply had enough. They thank their supporters but say they cannot go on any longer. The holiday family at Westridge Farm in Ryde have shared a heartfelt message with supporters announcing that they have no fight left and have come to an agreement with their landlord to, subject to planning permission being granted, vacate the farm later in the year. The contentious West Acre planning application for 472 homes on the last dairy farm in Ryde is once again being discussed at the planning committee. The message from the holidays explains that we as a family are broken and we have simply had enough. They thank their supporters but say they cannot go on any longer. The message on their social media account reads, "For the last 6 years our family has faced an uphill fight to try and save our home, farm and livelihood at Westridge Farm. The planning meeting on the 27th of July 2021 was hard to bear, watching on as our future life at Westridge Farm was debated. The way in which planning was granted felt like such a forced and bullied approach by certain council officers and councillors, which is something we have failed to come to terms with, as we felt the decision was not fairly decided. The days, weeks and months following this planning decision have been the hardest times of our lives, trying to process and understand what happened. We have lived our lives for so long with such uncertainty, not knowing the next move of the landlord, developer and council, and when we would be served notice to leave, yet continuing to farm every single day. It has got to the point where we cannot go on any longer. We have no fight left. Therefore, it's with a heavy heart we have reached an agreement with our landlord to gain vacant possession of Westridge Farm. Subject to planning being granted, farming will cease at Westridge Farm by the 31st of October 2022. We are so thankful for the community's support, as without you all, we certainly wouldn't have made it this far. We are truly sorry that we cannot go on fighting, but we can only take so much. We know the community may well continue this fight without us. But we as a family are broken and we have simply had enough. For the sake of our own mental well-being, after over 55 years farming this land, the time has come for us to step away and find our future happiness away from Westridge Farm.
Banners go up to demand the return of much-loved head teacher following her unexpected departure. From On the Wight, read by Chris. The sudden departure of an Isle of Wight primary school head teacher has left parents and pupils angry and upset. Banners have been placed on the school fencing at the entrance to the Arreton St George's CE Primary School following the sudden departure of Mrs Maria Herbert, who became head teacher to the village school in September 2020. The signs read, Mrs Herbert is Arreton Primary, and Save our head, bring back Mrs Herbert. Some parents have laid the blame of the sudden departure of Mrs Herbert, who has worked at the school for 15 years, with the Board of Governors. The Chair of Governors, Eric Hemming, issued the following statement. After careful consideration, Maria will be leaving the school. We know that this has been a difficult decision. She has always given all of herself for the benefit of the school's children and the whole Arreton family. We will all miss her constant presence in the school, her kindness, commitment and support for everyone, and in expressing our immense gratitude for her service, we wish her every success and contentment as she moves forward. According to the Edwise website, although his career was in healthcare management, when Mr Hemming retired to the island, he became a school governor and later chair of governors. He is also the chair of Edwise. In the letter sent to parents by the chair of governors, a comment from Mrs Herbert, in brackets Maria, read, Thank you for all your support, kindness and friendship during my time at Arreton. It has been a pleasure and a great privilege to be part of the Arreton family, and I will miss you all very much. I wish you all success, health, and happiness for the future. In the school's latest newsletter, 17th of Jan 2022, Mrs Rebecca Day, a head teacher at Gatton and Lake Primary School, introduces herself to parents as the new executive head teacher. When the reorganisation of schools from 3 tiers to 2 tiers took place in 2010, Arreton CE Primary joined a federation with Oakfield CE Primary. That federation has now been dissolved, meaning a change of governors for both schools.
This is Alison reading an article from the Island Echo entitled Duo Ordered to Pay Compensation to McDonald's After Smashing Perspex Screen. 37-year-old Emma James and 28-year-old Lee Ritchie have both been fined and ordered to pay compensation after smashing a Perspex screen at McDonald's. James of Newport Road in Ventnor and Ritchie of Cooper's Lane in Wellow appeared before the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, each charged with criminal damage, to which they both pleaded guilty. Liz Miller, prosecuting, said that the defendants had been involved in a disagreement with staff at the fast food takeaway in Newport on the 13th of June last year. A Perspex screen, used as part of McDonald's COVID measures, was picked up and smashed, with an estimated cost to the company of £200. A McDonald's worker sustained cuts to his nose, ear and around his eye, but charges of assault could not be brought before the court due to the expiry of time limits. Defending, Oscar Vincent said that James had gone 5 months without offending and was making good progress, having ended an abusive relationship. At the time of the incident, she was misusing alcohol and drugs. Ritchie's solicitor said that since the incident, he has sought help from social services for anger problems. Magistrates said that the defendants' behaviour was unacceptable and fined them £80 each and ordered them both to pay £100 compensation.
This is Brian reading an article from On the Wight. Call for Planning Committee to see through the facade and call this out as a major breach of planning. The Planning Committee will make the decision this evening and has been urged by Mr. Stewart to see through the facade and call this out as a major breach of planning. The development of a holiday camp on the Military Road has been branded the result of planning failure and developer greed. The Isle of Wight Council's Planning Committee will meet to discuss the change of Atherfield Bay Holiday Camp into Sandy Lanes, an exclusive gated development of luxury homes on the island's coast. There's been uproar in Bryston and the surrounding villages over the developer seeking retrospective planning permission for some work already started. Local resident and parish councillor Nick Stewart said the current developer has ignored the permitted plans and built a future ruin. The scheme's developer, Alan Dugard of Interguide Isle of Wight, previously stated he had done nothing wrong and the allegations of planning permission breaches were speculation. Mr. Stewart said the scheme is 30% bigger with more buildings, higher roofs and massive windows, but the Isle of Wight Council's planning department think it is just minor amendments. He said the council needed to be rapid and robust in their response, but there was no enforcement. He claimed the planning report could have been dictated by the developer. After weighing up all the aspects of the application, officers have suggested the scheme be granted permission. While it was acknowledged the planning team is under huge pressure, their decision, Mr. Stewart says, has utterly failed the public interest, supports a blot on the landscape and sets a deeply worrying precedent. The Planning Committee will make the decision this evening and has been urged by Mr. Stewart to see through the facade and call this out as a major breach of planning. He is pushing for action from a feeble council before there is permanent damage to an unspoilt part of the island's landscape, its dark sky plans and its reputation.
This is Chris reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Ryde Council plea with business owners to make pedestrian zone safe. Business owners and managers in Ryde High Street are being asked to help keep the pedestrian zone safe by sticking to the rules when it comes to deliveries. Since the pedestrian zone was created in the High Street, vehicle deliveries have been restricted to between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. Grace's Bakery is allowed access to Mill Lane owing to a previous long-held access agreement. Ryde Council Town Clerk Tina Dyer is growing increasingly concerned for the safety of people using the High Street after 10 a.m. as vehicles have been flouting the new regulations. She said, "We have seen many vehicles continuing to enter the pedestrian zone after 10 a.m. and we are acutely concerned for the safety of the public." A leaflet is being sent to all businesses in the High Street, reminding them of the times when deliveries can be made. If deliveries are made after 10 a.m, the loading bays in Garfield Road and John Street should be used, and items moved by trolley to the business premises. Penalties will be enforced with drivers who contravene the regulations. The pedestrian zone was created as part of the Ryde Heritage Action Zone, and the aim is to create a space where people feel happy and safe to gather. The aim is to make the High Street a hub of activity and to increase dwell time, bringing more people to businesses located there and to use the space for events and alfresco dining. Business owners and managers in the High Street are being asked to remind suppliers they need to make deliveries before 10 a.m. and book ferry times to be able to meet that deadline.
37% increase in Isle of Wight enforcement complaints during COVID, but new planning officers. From On the Wight, read by Chris. After seeing a 37% increase in enforcement complaints since COVID, Isle of Wight Council said last year it would look to recruit temporary planning staff to ease the workload. Officers are being urged to get tough on breaches by the Isle of Wight Council's Planning Committee. The committee decided last night, Tuesday, to approve the retrospective planning permission for the Atherfield Bay holiday camp development, but the extent of the work done without planning permission was branded a step too far by councillors. Enforcement teams ensure planning permission is being correctly followed and investigate suspected breaches of planning control. Councillor Vanessa Churchman said the Atherfield development was a blatant attack on democracy as the permission, which had been consulted, was now being overridden, with the committee being asked to rubber stamp it. Councillors then questioned how the authority could stop this from happening again. In September last year, the council announced it would look to recruit temporary planning staff to ease the current workload after an unusually high number of planning and enforcement applications. The council said it had seen a 37% increase in enforcement complaints during the COVID lockdown. Despite the wish nearly 6 months ago, Cabinet Member for Planning, Councillor Paul Fuller, said after the meeting yesterday, no officers had been recruited. Instead, he said, the authority was talking to town, parish and community councils who were very supportive of the enforcement role and ensuring it was made better. In Newport, the Community Council is looking to pay for a part-time enforcement officer who only works in the county town and Carisbrooke. If it is approved in its budget next month, the Community Council will be paying more than £21,500 for that role. Councillor Fuller said the proposal at Newport was intended to be a pilot scheme, but other councils, including Ryde, Sandown and some rural communities, were really excited about it. Councillor Fuller said, with planning enforcement the way it is, it was always going to be difficult to do what we wanted, but we have the town and parish councils on board, which is really good. Figures from the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities show in the year up to September 2021, 16 enforcement actions were undertaken by the Isle of Wight Council, with only 5 enforcement notices issued.
This is Alison, reading an article from the Island Echo entitled 3 Youths Detained After Rooftop Incident in Ryde High Street. A section of the High Street in Ryde has been closed by police this evening, Wednesday, due to a rooftop incident. Officers are in attendance on the pedestrianised section of the town near to Boots and Costa, with a cordon in place at John Street and Anglesey Street. The National Police Air Service helicopter from Bournemouth has been drafted in to assist with the incident, which began around 1810. Members of the public are being kept back from the area. An update at 1912. 3 youths have been detained by police after throwing tiles from the rooftops, smashing them onto the high street below. The teens have been successfully tracked down by the police helicopter and coaxed out by a dog unit, with the trio apprehended to the rear of Boots off Victoria Street. They are now being taken to Ryde Police Station to be collected by their parents. The act of mindless vandalism has seen a number of officers tied up for the past hour, plus the significant cost of calling in the police chopper. High Street has now reopened and the incident has been brought to a close.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. The Wight Strollers are back with Dick Whittington at Medina Theatre. Returning to Pantoland with Dick Whittington, the timeless tale of the boy who travels to London to make his fortune, the Wight Strollers are delighted to be back where they belong, with a show boasting a wealth of colourful costumes, toe-tapping numbers and a talented local cast. Are the streets of London really paved with gold? Will Dick find true love? Will King Rat's evil plan for world domination come to fruition? Will Smudge the cat ever get his dreamies? Will Dame Polly Pudding ever make a decent cake? You'll have to book tickets to find out. Director Sarah Scotcher says, "There is huge excitement among the cast for this year's pantomime, myself included. In the 42 years I've been doing panto with the Wight Strollers, 2021 was only the second year I've ever missed. A lot has changed in the 2 years since we've been on stage. For one, our little ones have grown up, but never fear, there's a new generation of strollers ready to tread the boards. But there's one thing that hasn't changed, and that's the panto magic and traditions that our company loves so much." Brought to you by the production team behind Strollers' sellout 40th anniversary panto of Sleeping Beauty, the Wight Strollers production of Dick Whittington is set to be a hit with audience members young and old. The script is penned once again by Sarah and Emily Scotcher, with Kim Ball as musical director and Cheryl and Izzy Rudd as choreographers, Geraldine Tulloch as head of costume, Richard Hole as stage manager, and Eliza Jones as set designer. Tickets are £14 for adults and £10 for under 14s, and these prices include the theatre's £1 per ticket booking fee. The performances are Saturday the 19th of February at 2:30 and 7:30pm, Sunday the 20th of February at 2:30pm, and Saturday 26th of February at 2:30 and 7:30pm. One feature of the Strollers Pantos has always been their support for local charities, and this year they will be donating the proceeds of the production to the Isle of Wight Food Bank, Baby Box, Saturday Club for the Deaf, Save Our Hedgehogs Isle of Wight, the Vectis Corps of Drums Marching Band, and will also be fundraising for their 11th public access defibrillator. To quote Sarah again, the team can't wait to be back doing what we do best, raising money for local charities by putting on a fabulous show. Do them, local charities and yourself a favour and bag your tickets from Medina Theatre on 01983 823 884 or by visiting www.medinatheatre.co.uk. Trust us, you don't want to miss it. Find the Wight Strollers on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and at whitestrollers.blogspot.com to keep up with the latest behind-the-scenes news, pictures and sneak peeks of Panto.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Grand ideas for Sandown's once grand hotel that is now target of arson attacks. An iconic Sandown building could be in for a much anticipated facelift as a plan is submitted to refurbish and demolish parts of the Grand Hotel, restoring it to its former Art Deco glory. Arson attacks have plagued the vacant hotel on Culver Parade in recent years, and it is looking increasingly dilapidated. On the 5th of January, 4 days after the application was submitted to the Isle of Wight Council, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service crews were again called to outbuildings on the site. A separate plan to demolish them and build new holiday apartments has also been submitted to the council, but had to revised when concerns were raised about the potential impact on the historic World War II Pluto pipeline. It has now been confirmed the old fuel pipes skirt round the hotel site and its basement was not the location of the control centre. Owner Nick Spiker is proposing that the main building's walls are painted and its hotel signs are reinstalled. Documents say the vision is to restore the hotel to its 1938 glory and its designer's original concept. Ground floor extensions would also be torn down and the original external appearance of the building reinstated where possible. Designs drawn by MJH Architectural Service show vertical windows on the first and second floors over the main entrance. Windows on the first and second floors would revert to their original design. Old ones would be removed and new ones reflecting the Art Deco style would be installed. The ground floor lobby entrance would be demolished, reinstating the steps, canopy and entrance door, refurbishing the original revolving timber door. There is no mention in the planning documents of whether or not the hotel would reopen, however. It's not the first time that planning permission has been sought for the site, with applications filed in 2012 and 2014. To view the plans, you can visit the Council's planning register. Comments will be accepted until the 18th of February.
Diamond ring and Cartier watch stolen in pre-Christmas burglary. From On the Wight, read by Chris. A diamond ring and a Cartier watch were stolen in a Cowes burglary just before Christmas. Have you been offered the items? Has someone tried to sell these items to you? This Cartier Panther 1120 watch was stolen during a burglary on Baring Road in Cowes on the 22nd of December 2021, along with a ring. The ring is described as a 1.25 carat oval diamond solitaire engagement ring with a gold band. We are asking anyone who has been offered sale of these items, whether in person, online, or if you are the shop owner who has been approached in store by someone trying to pawn these items, to please contact the police. Anyone with information or who knows may be responsible for this crime is asked to contact the police on 101 quoting 442105 17377 or online. Alternatively, you can contact the independent charity Crime Stoppers 100% anonymously on 0800 555 111 or via their anonymous online form at crimestoppersuk.org.
This is Alison reading an article from On the Wight entitled Rescued from Death. Misunderstood Minnie Moo needs a new home after owner passes away. Hear the story of Minnie Moo, who was rescued from being euthanised when she was 7 and lived a happy life with her new owner for 9 years before she passed away. Minnie Moo is now looking for a new home. A shy, scared cat, whose original owners requested she be put to sleep, needs a home of her own, following the passing of the kind lady who took her in after she was rescued from death. Black and white Minnie Moo has had an emotionally turbulent life. First arriving in care as a kitten, she was adopted at 6 months old. But by the time she turned 7 in 2013, her owners felt they could no longer care for her and despite having no health problems, took her to the vet to be euthanised. Luckily, the vet contacted Cats Protection's Isle of Wight Adoption Centre instead. Minnie Moo was stressed and traumatised when she arrived at the centre. Staff and volunteers quickly realised that the unfamiliar environment was too much for her, and she was entrusted to experienced fosterer Fran, who gave Minnie Moo the time and space she needed to feel safe once more. Joe Morrison, deputy manager at the centre, explains, "Fran didn't push for Minnie Moo's behaviour to change. She let her settle and become familiar with her new surroundings. Little by little, Minnie Moo learned to trust Fran. We all knew that she would never be a cuddly cat, but there was something about this little misunderstood Moggy that really pulled at your heartstrings." Fran gained Minnie Moo's trust, and after time, Fran was able to stroke her, and Minnie Moo became happier. Of course, Minnie Moo needed a permanent home, and luckily a lady called Sheila proved the perfect match. Sheila lived alone and provided the quiet environment and unwavering support and love that helped Minnie Moo enjoy life and settle at last. Sheila shared the story of her life with Minnie Moo in the Centre's 2018 newsletter and said, "Patience is the word with Minnie Moo. She has gradually morphed from living under the bed to having the confidence to sleep out in the open on a fluffy rug by the settee, and loves to come to me when I am in bed and lets me stroke her. She loves going out and may disappear from dawn to dusk, punctuated with sneaky trips back for a snack. She always wants to come on my lap when I'm having a meal on a tray in front of the TV. Although we've had our challenges, I've never given up on Minnie Moo. She is now a loving and much loved cat. I wouldn't change her for the world." Sadly, Sheila passed away in May, and there was nobody left to care for Minnie Moo long term. The centre took her in again, but the shock of her beloved owner's death and change of circumstances took its toll on Minnie Moo, who is now 16 years old and a senior. Once again, centre life was a challenge for Minnie Moo, who would hide away in her outside run, even on colder days, only coming in at night to eat her food. Staff and volunteers would sit quietly outside with her and talk or read to her, but even a gentle unknown presence was too much. Joe adds, "Minnie Moo is back in foster care now, which suits her much better. She is still hiding in the day, but has begun to be a little more sociable in the evenings. She is getting used to new smells, sounds, and her new foster mum and dad. But what Minnie Moo needs is one special person who will look past her scared ways and create a quiet, loving home for her. It will take time, patience, and a gentle, kind approach. But we are sure Minnie Moo will be able to enjoy life again, as she did with Sheila. We are here to offer support and guidance and want nothing more than to see her happy and relaxed once more. To offer Minnie Moo a home, or for further information about the work of Cats Protection's Isle of Wight Adoption Centre, visit the website or call 03 000 120 251.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Charity challenge to see team walk in women's shoes, literally and metaphorically. A team of fundraisers will be trekking 12 miles from St Helens to East Cowes whilst wearing women's shoes later this year in a bid to raise funds for Wight Dash, a local charity that offers domestic abuse support for women and families. Peter May, who is organising the To Be In Her Shoes charity challenge, is looking for 12 or so men to join him on the walk to help raise money for the Worthy Island charity. The only stipulation is that the walk must be done in women's footwear. It's hoped that around £2,500 can be raised for Wight Dash, with the aim of each participant generating £200 in sponsorship. Peter has already raised £160. The walk, which will begin at Fakenham Farm in St Helens and end at Shoreside Cafe in East Cowes, is planned for Sunday the 29th of May, avoiding clashes with bank holidays. Peter says, "This will be a fun, tongue-in-cheek event, so come on guys, get involved and raise money and lots of awareness for this amazing, life-changing charity. Even if you can't do the whole walk, maybe you could join in with us on the route. There will be lots going on up at the farm site before we leave at approximately 11 a.m, and there will be a gathering down at the Shoreside Cafe on our arrival late afternoon. The support of local businesses is sought to help with t-shirts, posters and banners. There is also a call for large female footwear." More information about how to get involved can be found at www.facebook.com/groups/310-475-937-535-686.
This is Chris reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Police and Crime Commissioner proposes council tax increase to boost policing. The Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight has set out her recommendation to the Police and Crime Panel for the police precept of the council tax this year. Following consultation and support from local residents, Donna Jones will present her intention to increase the policing precept of the council tax by 4.4%, which is £10 per annum based on B and D properties, on Friday the 28th of January. It means an additional £9 million will be raised for Hampshire Constabulary in 2022 to 2023. Almost two-thirds of local residents and partners who responded to the Commissioner's consultation said they would agree a 4.4% increase to support policing and prevent crime. A total of 4,340 members of the public have taken part in a number of online consultation exercises during the 4-week consultation period from the 2nd of December 2021 to January the 4th, 2022. An increase of £10 per annum based on B and D properties will support the delivery of the Commissioner's police and crime plan, more police, safer streets, and fund new initiatives including the recruitment of 196 new police officers for Hampshire Constabulary and the enabling infrastructure which supports the delivery of the PCC's number one priority to have 600 more police officers by 2023 and the priority of improving police visibility. An additional £1 million in 2022 to 2023 to support increased commissioning of services to deliver the Commissioner's priorities to improve outcomes for victims and prevent young people from committing crime. Significant investment in both staff and supporting infrastructure for the 101 service to reduce call waiting times and to provide improved feedback. Investment in the police estate to ensure it remains operationally effective and provides a modern and safe working environment for police officers and staff. This includes a focus on the delivery of the top 5 areas which impact the public of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight the most: serious and organised crime and countering terrorism, murder and serious violence, domestic abuse, rape and serious sexual offences, child abuse, exploitation and vulnerability, and fraud and cybercrime. Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones said, "I would like to thank local residents and partners for taking the time to give me their feedback through my consultation. With the significant support I have received and the Chief Constable's operational recommendation, I will present my intention to the Police and Crime Panel to increase the police precept by £10 per annum this year. This will help to support the delivery of the priorities set out in my police and crime plan: more police, safer streets, including the recruitment of 196 new police officers, improvements to the 101 to reduce call waiting times and improve feedback, modern, improved and safe police buildings, and additional commissioning funds to prevent crime, divert young people away from crime, and improve services for victims. These will all help to make Hampshire and the Isle of Wight 2 of the safest places to live, work and visit without fear of crime."
Driver caught speeding at 72 miles per hour in a 30 was rushing to the car ferry. From Island Echo, read by Chris. Rushing to catch the Yarmouth car ferry at more than twice the speed limit has landed a Cowsman in court, where he received a ban and hefty fine. 34-year-old Aaron Hayward of Admiral Way in Cowes pleaded guilty when he appeared before the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, charged with speeding exceeding 30 miles an hour. Magistrates heard from the prosecution that Hayward was travelling along Baldner Road in Yarmouth in his Audi A4 estate when he was caught by the speed camera van at 72 miles per hour, the limit being 30 miles an hour. A notice was sent to the registered keeper's address, and Hayward, who runs his own business as a ground worker, admitted he was the driver. Addressing the bench, Hayward said he could offer no justification for his actions, but stated he was trying to reach the ferry as he was running behind time. With magistrates considering a ban, the 34-year-old said such action would have an impact on his work, including his 2 employees as well as his family. Magistrates, who said that the implications of his driving could have been horrendous, banned Aaron Hayward from driving for 56 days, fined him £600 and ordered him to pay £85 costs with a £60 surcharge.
This is Alison reading an article from the Isle of Wight Radio, entitled "Poor Driving Behaviours on the Isle of Wight Targeted in Weekend Operation." The Isle of Wight's road policing and armed response vehicle teams were joined by Mainland Roads Policing Unit colleagues last weekend as part of a proactive operation targeting bad drivers. Activity was carried out across both Saturday and Sunday, 22nd and 23rd of January, with a number of notable actions taken against drivers flouting the law. On Saturday, 26 tickets were issued to motorists for a number of road-related offences as follows: 10 tickets for speeding, 2 tickets for illegal number plates, 1 ticket for an incorrectly fitted breakaway cable, 4 tickets issued to drivers who weren't wearing seatbelts, 1 ticket issued for driving without a licence, 1 ticket issued for a vehicle which was not roadworthy, 1 ticket issued for an untaxed vehicle, 2 tickets issued to uninsured vehicles, 1 ticket issued to a vehicle with an insecure load, 1 ticket for a vehicle parked on zigzags at a pelican crossing, 2 tickets for cars using altered exhausts. On Sunday, a further 23 tickets were issued to drivers for the following offences. 2 tickets issued to drivers not wearing seatbelts. 1 ticket issued for an uninsured vehicle. 1 ticket issued to a motorcyclist with a tinted visor. 19 tickets issued for speeding, including 1 driver prosecuted for driving almost double the speed limit. A 22-year-old man was also arrested in St George's Way, Newport, that afternoon on suspicion of drug driving. He has been released but remains under investigation while inquiries continue. Later on Sunday evening at around 9 p.m, officers came across a vehicle in a hedge along Quor Abbey Lane. The driver was subsequently arrested and charged. Beverly Morris, aged 31, of Wilton Park Road in Shanklin, was charged with drink driving and was bailed to appear at Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on the 11th of February. District Commander for the Isle of Wight, Superintendent Jim Pegler, said, "The policing of dangerous and poor standards of driving committed by motorists on the Isle of Wight road network is something I will continue to focus on to improve safety for road users. If you are driving a vehicle on the island, my strong advice is that you pay attention to the condition of your vehicle, have the required documentation, and drive carefully with consideration for other road users."
Before we start the second part of the county press, here is this week's society news. The swimming group at Matina is held every Monday. The cost is £5 for swimming. Transport is available if required. Swimming is between 1:30 and 2:30 p.m. If you'd like to join us, please call the office on 522205 for more details. We are fortunate to have use of the whole pool, so there's plenty of space for new members. Godshill Coffee Morning will restart on Tuesday at the Old Smithy Tea Room in Godshill between 10:30 and 11:45. Pop along and enjoy coffee and chat with our wonderful volunteers. Coffee and Chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Only £1 for cake and coffee. Please come along for a chat, and members of staff will be there for any assistance with equipment and information. Our Mix and Mingle group is held every Thursday at Millbrook House. Transport is available if required. For more details, please call at the office. Our lunch club will resume on Tuesday, 8th of February, and will be meeting at the Fighting Cock, Arreton, at 12:30 p.m. Transport is available if required. Please call the office to book a space. The closing date for numbers is Friday, 4th of February. Please remember, if you're feeling unwell or have a temperature, do not attend any activity at Millbrook House. We want to protect both staff, volunteers and fellow members. Right, this is the second part of the Talking News, read by Howard and
Sonara.
And we start with letters to the editor, and Sonara is going to do the first one, I think.
Schools too early to ease COVID restrictions? It's a question asked by Peter Shreve, Assistant District Secretary of the Isle of Wight National Education Union. The island schools have been relatively lucky, with overall pupil attendance being generally above mainland attendance and staffing being somewhat more resilient. However, education is still feeling the impact of COVID. The latest ONS infection survey update shows 1 in 10 primary age pupils have COVID. We should remember that schools have only been back for a short time since the Christmas holidays. Indeed, on January the 19th, the Prime Minister said he did expect cases to continue rising in primary schools. Knowing that we tend to see transmission rise in schools in the weeks following a school holiday, is it not prudent to wait? Easing too soon could lead to increased disruption, with children and staff having to isolate. We wish to avoid more disruption, particularly for pupils taking national exams this year. Their education has been badly disrupted already. Rather than announcements arguably aimed at deflecting pressure from the Prime Minister and his job, government should be exercising a duty of care to island pupils and the staff who educate them. Government should have got ventilation and filtration solutions in place before Omicron, as SAGE advised. Medical practitioners are doing so throughout the pandemic. Visitor numbers are limited in chemists. Masks must be worn and queues stretch outside into the cold wintry weather. In GP surgeries, windows and doors can be found open. One-way systems exist and provision appears to be limited. Routine tests appear to have been abandoned. It can take 3 months or more to have a filling replaced on the NHS, and a routine check-up is impossible unless one goes private. On visiting a dentist this week, external doors were open. Heating appeared to be full on, as were ventilation and filtration units, yet there only appeared to be one other patient on site. Education establishments are doing the very best, but mitigations in education are nowhere near those that these knowledgeable medical experts are using. Are these experts wrong? Are we moving too fast? Should we move more carefully? Ultimately, we need to avoid this stop-start to learning.
This letter is from Jonathan Bacon, Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for Environment, Heritage and Waste Management. I'm writing in response to Mr. Offer's letter on dog fouling and enforcement in last week's county press. The majority of dog owners are responsible. On the island, we currently send around 20 tonnes of dog poo a month to landfill, all gathered from dedicated dog bins. That's about the same weight as 3.5 elephants or 12 cars. However, dog poo dangling from trees, dog fouling on pathways, and where to put dog poo are issues the council takes very seriously. Both council officers and councillors deal with these sorts of issues on a daily basis. It's important to stress to dog owners that when it comes to their pet poo, any general waste bin will do. Dog poo can go in litter bins, dog bins and the black waste bins at home, but bag it before binning it. The council has a dedicated team of enforcement officers who patrol the streets, talking to the community and investigating litter, vandalism, graffiti, dog fouling, bin misuse and fly tips. The approach taken when offences have been committed is generally one of education, followed by enforcement action wherever appropriate. From April 1st to December 31st, 2021, this approach led to 83 formal investigations, 11 warning letters and 3 fixed penalty notices. In this same period, out of the 568 fly tips collected by the council or its contractors, 196 were black bags left out on the wrong day, and 205 were other household items left out and not placed in a black bag. It should be noted that the Isle of Wight has one of the lowest rates of fly tipping activity in southeast England and one of the lowest rates in the country. Taking enforcement action and investigating dog fouling and fly tips is not easy and requires clear evidence which many professional fly tippers are good at removing. It also necessitates a proportional response when the culprit is identified. Such an approach must take account of whether it's a first-time offence, the size and scale, and the fact that some cases are genuine mistakes. It also involves steps of talking to the culprit, education, informal or formal warnings, and in many cases providing the responsible person with the opportunity to take corrective actions and pay for the cost of clear-up. This will often take place to positive effect prior to consideration being given to prosecution or other restrictive enforcement. That said, in some situations, the severity of the offence must and will result in more immediate enforcement action. The Council is often criticised for the limited number of prosecutions that take place. However, this doesn't mean the system is failing. If you have a society where there are a large number of prosecutions for murder, it doesn't necessarily mean you live in a safe place. In the case of dog fouling and braiding, mentioned in Mr. Offer's letter, an investigation took place which resulted in the culprit being identified and a verbal warning being issued. No further complaints have been raised since this action 4 months ago. Issues relating to the process of complaint are under active consideration as part of the current fly tipping task and finish group. There are elements which can be improved, and the group will aim to address these concerns. If you wish to complain about fly tipping, please supply any evidence that might help indicate the identity of the culprit. Fly tips, hazardous waste, litter and animal carcasses on the highway and pavements should be reported to Island Roads on 01983 822 440 or by emailing info@islandroads.com. Complaints regarding council public land, parks, beaches, playgrounds, public footpaths, etc. should be reported online via the council's website or by calling the council's waste services on 01983 823 777.
This next letter is headed Alliance, Open and Transparent. It's written by Councillor Ian Ward, Isle of Wight Councillor for Sandown South. When they took power, the Alliance political group promised that the chair of Corporate Scrutiny Committee should come from the main opposition group. It's in the minutes of the full council meeting on May 26th, 2021. The Alliance has also repeatedly pledged to be open and transparent and work cross-party. When Councillor Steve Hastings stood down as chair of Corporate Scrutiny due to illness, the Conservative group nominated Councillor Joe Robertson to replace him. Advance notice of the nomination was given in the meeting papers for full council. By contrast, the Alliance group worked behind closed doors to spring their own choice during the meeting, disregarding their previous promises. They then voted their choice through without any debate or discussion. Working in secret, curtailing proper debate, and whipping their own councillors to install their choice to chair a cross-party committee, Islanders will decide for themselves how open and transparent the Alliance group really are.
This letter is from Chris Offer in Brading. In view of the horrendous toll of road traffic accidents over the last few months on the island, second only to London apparently, I read with interest that in just one weekend, a visiting roads policing unit from the mainland issued 49 fixed penalty tickets. These included offences of speeding, no insurance, not wearing a seatbelt, insecure load and unroadworthy vehicle, all potentially serious matters, as well as for a number of less serious offences. How many would be issued in a typical weekend without the intervention of the visiting roads policing unit, I wonder. In addition, a man was arrested on suspicion of a drug driving and assistance offence was rendered at an incident involving a tractor and overturned trailer. What more evidence does the Chief Constable and or Police and Crime Commissioner require for the immediate reinstatement of a dedicated island RPU rather than a unit with split responsibility for roads, policing and firearms response? I trust that our newly appointed District Commander will be pressing for the same. If not, will any one of the three be explaining why not?
Scleroderma and Raynaud's. This is sent in by Elenia Perry-Lowe of Newport. A great big thank you to all who supported the recent pop-up shop for Scleroderma and Raynaud's, especially the business people of Holyrood Street, Rod of the Newport Ale House, Emma of Sheerpink, Stainless Games, and the O2 phone shop. They all gave me so much support. Also, thanks to Chris Arago-Pedley of Metier in St Thomas's Square, who gave me her old shop for the run-up to Christmas. I met many people who suffer from both these illnesses. I will be in the Castle Inn at the top of Newport High Street on Thursday at 2 p.m. I would be happy to see anyone who wants to meet up, just for a chat and to discuss the possibility of having monthly meetings.
Downing Street Canapés, Operation Red Meat, Melton Mowbray pork pies. They're all a diversionary dog's dinner cooked up while the real plat du jour is surreptitiously served by Dishy Rishi, who quietly spills the beans that a staggering £4.3 billion, yes, £4.3 billion of the £5.8 billion stolen by furlough fraudsters will be written off, whilst Therese Coffey announces the government will spend £530 million to identify and prosecute universal credit cheats, an interesting dichotomy between two groups. One more likely to include loyal Conservative voters and party donors, the other less likely to. They say only a fool bites the hand that feeds you. Many Conservatives under Boris Johnson's leadership increasingly look like little children who've been caught with their hands well and truly stuck in the Treasury cookie jar with crumbs all over their face. And when questioned say, No, I didn't eat any biscuits.
And we're on to Wight Memories and Nostalgia. And this is to do with Ryde's Royal Isle of Wight County Hospital, remembered 30 years after closure. Many islanders will remember the county hospital in Ryde, which closed 3 decades ago. The hospital opened its first building off Swanmore Road in 1849 for the relief of the sick and disabled poor from all parts of the island. The first building, designed by local architect Thomas Hellyer, had space for 20 beds. Over the years, buildings were added for additional wards, outpatients, and auxiliary functions until the hospital spread from Swanmore Road to West Street along one side of Milligan Road. With the arrival of the National Health Service in 1948, management transferred from the local committee to the management group covering most of the island hospitals. According to the Isle of Wight NHS timeline, St Mary's Hospital in Newport was designed the District General Hospital for the island in 1987. Services were slowly transferred over from the island's other cottage hospitals, including Frank James and Shanklin, to St Mary's. Princess Alexandra carried out the formal opening of the new St Mary's as the island's District General Hospital in September 1991. The main wards and functions at the former county hospital in Ryde closed in 1992, and the area has since been redeveloped.
This is the My View column from the County Press, and this one is by Jim Gibbons, entitled Borders, Brexit and Freedom. One of the problems about Brexit, which I support, which should have been obvious from the start, was the Good Friday Agreement which practically stipulates that there must be no hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Since there are hard borders between the EU and non-EU countries because of duty, quotas and tariff differences, etc., since there are hard borders between the EU and non-EU countries because of duty, quotas and tariff differences, etc., and the Republic was remaining in the EU while Northern Ireland, as part of the UK, was leaving it, there would have to be a hard border or some alternative sort of agreement between the UK and the EU. This was kicked into the long grass, and we were assured all would be well. Clearly, there is no such agreement. We were misled, I feel, by Boris, and we've ended up with a hard border in the Irish Sea, splitting the United Kingdom in two. To digress for a moment, in discussing Irish matters with an Irishman, I asked him why he referred to the UK bit as the 6 counties. He replied that it made no sense to call it Northern Ireland, as the northernmost part of the island is in the Republic, and Ulster doesn't convey the right sense, since that province has 9 counties, of which 3 are in the Republic. In the dispute between the UK and the EU, the status quo gives the EU everything it wants, and so long as the UK takes no action, it has lost. Looking further ahead, rumour has it that the Unionists are becoming reconciled to being outbred by nationalists, which would leave the way clear to the reunion of Ireland. One of Tony Blair's reforms when he was Prime Minister was to establish parliaments and assemblies in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, giving them a lot of say in managing their own affairs. This is how we've come to the strange state of each country making its own anti-COVID rules, resulting in groups of people from one place travelling a few miles to benefit or de-benefit from laxer rules. The oddest result, however, was true before COVID reared its ugly head, and that is that Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have bodies of elected representatives to speak for them and push their own agendas, while the biggest by far, England, has no such body. The situation is totally unsymmetrical and can only be repaired by having an English Parliament. Perhaps we should be demonstrating in the streets for independence for England. Who wrote, "Smile at us, pay us, pass us, but do not quite forget that we are the people of England and we have not spoken yet." In my last article, I asked who wrote, "My country is the world and my religion is to do good." That was Thomas Paine.
And we come now to the contribution to this edition of the County Press from our MP, Bob Seeley, making sure that the island comes first, not last. Earlier this month, Southern Water pledged to me a commitment to significantly reduce sewage and storm overflows into the seas around the island. Now that we have left the EU and can more easily improve our environmental laws, the island will become one of a small number of national pathfinder sites, acting as an example of best practice. This is great news for cleaning up our rivers and beaches, although we should not overstate the issue. The water around the island, as the data shows, is clean. But what we should now be ending is the casual acceptance of storm overflow carrying waste into the rivers and sea. The Environment Bill that the Conservatives have taken through Parliament is groundbreaking legislation that will make this a reality. I am grateful to everyone who campaigned in this national campaign, including surfers against sewage, islanders and mainland MPs who persuaded government to act. I want the island to be at the front of the queue for investments and improvements, and that means getting us included in pilot projects and pathfinder schemes. It's all part of getting a better deal for the island and ensuring that the island comes first, not last. In recent years, working with others, we saved Sandown School from closure and secured priority status for the island from the Arts Council, aiding all future funding bids. We secured the future of Island Line and, working with the Council Local Enterprise Partnership, the Department for Transport and Southern Western Railway, got a £26 million upgrade to the rolling stock stations and track, the first significant investment in over 50 years. Working with the previous council, we secured the Ventnor Quays site for the island at good value to ensure the future of shipbuilding on the island. We've got almost all the island included in the Solent Freeport area. In 2019, I successfully lobbied ministers to support the excellent bid put in by the Isle of Wight NHS Trust for its multi-million-pound upgrade in facilities at St Mary's. In late 2021, I ensured that the island's successful levelling up project was included in the first round of bids. In November, the government confirmed that the island's £6 million bid had been accepted. The money will help jobs and apprenticeships and support an expansion of our shipbuilding industry. So there is a lot being delivered for the island to create jobs, to improve transport, and, yes, to improve the environment too.
And now some items from what's on the Isle of Wight, including some information about the short story competition. What's on first at the Shanklin Theatre, February 2nd to 3rd of February, Joel Morris Dance Academy. Thursday 10th of February, Ranulph Fiennes. Thursday 17th of February, Mark Watson. Saturday 9th of February, Collabro. Then you've got The Life of Codebreaker, Alan Turing, subject of an Apollo Theatre play, taking on Breaking the Code by Hugh Whitmore. Tickets can be obtained from the Apollo Theatre at https://www.apollo.theatre.org.uk or by calling the box office on 01983 210010. The island's largest mixed arts festival, Ventnor Fringe, has open registration for artists looking to take part in this year's event. The festival will return from July 22nd to 31st. Anyone with questions can contact Mari at artists@vfringe.co.uk or call 0193 716 767. And then the last one before the short story winners, Groove to the Sound of the 70s in Shanklin. Turn back the time, enjoy a groove along to the sounds of the 70s. Jack Up events are preparing to wind the clock back once more with the return of Jack Up the 70s. The event at Lower Hyde in Shanklin aims to give people something to look forward to. If you're looking for a feel-good party night to remember, it will feature DJ sets playing 70s party classics through until 1 a.m. That's over 18s only. Tickets available from jackup70s.co.uk.
And now to the short story competition. Sight for Wight celebrates writing talent. For the second year running, Sight for Wight held its short story writing competition awards ceremony online as a virtual event. With more than 250 islanders tuning in to watch the results on YouTube and Facebook, the event surprised expectations. Once again, the charity secured an enviable range of celebrity readers, including Melvin Hayes, Amy Robbins, Richard Cadell, and Robert David Dawes. All the winning stories were recorded and are available to listen to on the charity's website at www.iwsb.org.uk. Claudia Summers was the under-12s winner with A Vision of a New World, recorded by Richard Cadell of Sooty and Sweep fame. Evelyn Shand was the winner of the 12 to 17 category with Underestimated, read by Amy Robbins of the Royal and Casualty shows. This year, the overall Higher Commended Award went to young writer Isabella Stanbridge for her story Mystery Man, read by Melvin Hayes. The Over 18s Award went to River Watson for his story Cliché, read by actor Robert Dawes. Competition organiser Chris Kane said, We were honoured to have such talented and famous readers, so a huge thanks to them for their help and support. This is one of our key fundraising events and so vital to help raise funds for our members. We couldn't have done it without the support of our generous sponsors, ASDA, Busy Bee, Chale Parish Council, Comic Coffee, Margaret Dilly, Dinosaur Isle, The Entertainer, Hover Travel, Isle of Wight College Restaurant, Janice Ferguson, Newport and Carisbrooke Parish Council, Sandham Office Services, Ventnor Botanic Garden, Wight Computers, and Wight Mouse Inn.
And this is one of the winning entries by Claudia Summers. It was a busy night in the maternity hospital. By the time the morning light stabbed through the blinds, 700 baby bugs had hatched. They squirmed and made little chub-chub noises, softly opening and closing their clam-like mouths. Their huge, crusty eyes were still shut tight and would remain so until day 5. The old hospital was painted brown. The smell was a curious mix of blood and custard. An old boxy computer perched at the front desk. Busily typing on the computer was an adult bug. They had soft, squishy bodies and were a larger version, much like the infants, but had developed rigid, spiky backs. Their arthritic spines made any sudden movements impossible. The nurse in charge was cataloguing the egg cases piled high on a steel trolley. The once perfect spherical egg jewels now resembled a disgusting mess, like cold apple crumble. Each baby was placed into a golden crib. These sparkled in the churning, dusty air and were the only clean items in the hospital. Nurses patrolled the rows of babies and made notes on clipboards whilst groaning every time they had to bend or twist. All infants received glibber juice in a bottle. They snatched at it with their flappy webbed fingers, and you could hear the scratch of their jaggy nails on the plastic as they gulped at the brown fluid. After feeding, their elastic tongues would flick out feverishly to explore whatever it landed on. Sometimes the tongues would slap onto the bars of the crib and wrap around, but mainly they'd make contact with their nasal area, where they stayed content for many hours, just lapping gently in the continual ooze of green, opaque slime. Day 5 was approaching with great anticipation. This was the day the infant's eyes opened, and they would be segregated. The infant eye domes would crack open like walnuts to reveal glistening globes of green or opal. The nurses were busy printing labels to fix onto the cribs. Everyone knew green-eyed bugs could see, but the opal-eyed bugs couldn't, and it was assumed that they could never be leaders. But the opal-eyed bugs had other talents. They could hear and summon happiness. If you were lucky enough to have green eyes, then you were considered a leader. If, however, you have opal eyes, you had to fit into the ways of life dictated by the green-eyed bugs. It had been like this for as long as anyone could remember, so long that everyone had forgotten about the opal-eyed bugs. On day 5, there was a terrible shock. The nurses were ready with their labels. Everyone could hear the eyeballs creaking, but when the eyes suddenly snapped open, the whole hospital gasped in confusion. The eyes weren't green or opal, they were a sea of shimmering rainbow. All the baby's eyes were mesmerizing prisms. Then, after several minutes of bewilderment, a clever opal-eyed nurse said, "That's enough. No more labels. I have a vision of a greater world where we work together. We all have something valuable to give." Some of the grown-up opal-eyed bugs reached out tentacles to the green-eyed bugs, and they made a chain of little bodies. Every back that had creaked and ached suddenly felt alive as the spines unravelled to reveal wings. One by one they created a light train that crackled against the cold night air and lit up each other like fireworks. Together, the once flightless creatures became beautiful fireflies. They flew out of the windows and escaped the dingy old hospital, soaring high above in a sparkling blue grotto. Buzzing with excitement, they settled their glowing bellies down over an autumn meadow scented with honey apple. Together they discovered peace.
And we're on to the items in general from the county press. Crown Court for man facing Michaela death charge. A man charged with causing death by dangerous driving near Arreton in 2020 will appear in court next month. Michaela May Logan of Carisbrook Road, Newport, was 19 years old when she died in a crash between Horringford and Hale Common on January 10, 2020. She was at the wheel of a Ford Fiesta while Mackenzie Hallett, 19, of Arundel Road, Ryde, was in a Ford Focus. He appeared before magistrates this week, 2 years after the crash, and is due before the Isle of Wight Crown Court on February 28th. Flowers and a teddy bear mark the spot where it happened, and a number of events have been held in memory of Michaela in the years since her death.
An evening of country music and the chance to get top tips from an island artist will both be on offer at Mountbatten in February. Island band Country Comfort will perform Mountbatten's first concert of 2022 next Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Meanwhile, landscape artist Christina Phillips will host guided tours of her new exhibition at Mountbatten on February 8th and 22nd and give visitors a chance to ask questions while watching her paint alongside the hospice's art therapist Marion Tasker. It's really important we give people a reason to come to Mountbatten so they can see our hospice is perhaps not what they imagine it to be, said Mountbatten CEO Nigel Hartley. Concert tickets cost £10 per person, which includes wine and canapes, and they must be pre-booked via https://www.mountbatten.org.uk/event/country comfort February. Christina, whose work explores her relationship with the island's rivers, beaches and coastline, will host the two sessions between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. To join, email Marion Tasker at mountbatten.org.uk.
Kidnapper and knife man jailed. Kidnapper Kazim Said has been sent to jail for 13 years. Judge Recorder Paul Garlick sentenced Said on Friday afternoon following a week-long trial, as reported in last week's county press. Said was found guilty by a jury of burglary of Mountbatten's furniture warehouse on Riverway, aggravated burglary of the home of Graham Deacon on Riverway, and aggravated burglary of Graham and Rachel Fuller's home at Nunnery Lane. He was also found guilty of kidnapping, unlawfully and by force or fraud, taking or carrying away Rachel and Graham Fuller against their will, and robbery of the couple of £600. 2 counts of possession of a knife were discharged, as the judge said the jury didn't have to return verdicts on those. Recorder Garlick said the ordeal the Fullers were put through was particularly horrifying, with Mr. Fuller suffering the humiliation of being naked in bed when the assailant woke him up at knife point to get dressed and taken to a cash point. The judge told Said it was made worse that you sat in the back seat with Mrs. Fuller, with Mr. Fuller knowing at any moment you could have used the knife on his wife. It's hard to imagine anything more serious. Russell Pine, representing Said, said he had been held in custody since the offences and feels isolated and lonely and wishes to be deported back to Iraq, even though he doesn't know if he would be safe if that happened. He said Said offered no reason for committing the offences, which he had denied throughout the trial once the jury found him guilty. He said he'd been asleep at the time of the kidnapping at a friend's house in Newport, but couldn't give the name or address of his friend. He said he'd never been to the Fuller's cottage or to their car. Said's DNA was found on partially eaten bread at the Fuller's cottage. When asked to explain this, Saeed told the court, fabricated, wasn't me. The Fullers both picked Mr. Saeed out of an identity lineup. And the courtroom hears of the impact on Saeed's 3 brave victims. The impact of knife man Kazim Saeed's crimes on his 3 elderly victims was outlined in court. Statements were read on behalf of the victims. First victim, Mr. Deacon, 84, has never returned to his Riverway home to live since he discovered Saeed in his bedroom. He underwent a terrifying ordeal when Saeed stole his bank card at knife point, took away his mobile phone and cut the light cord with his knife, leaving him in darkness. Mr. Deacon called the police as soon as he was able and outlined exactly what had happened to him. Mr. Deacon's daughter said he did not seem immediately affected, but as time went on, he became preoccupied with it. It cast a shadow over his life, with his memory deteriorating rapidly since. Saeed's next victims were Rachel and Graham Fuller. He burgled their home, kidnapped them, and robbed them of £600 at a cash point. Mrs. Fuller said afterwards, one of the most wounding things was the thought that if they lost their lives at Saeed's hands, it would be gruesome for their children. Mr. Fuller, a retired clergyman, said one upsetting thought running through his head was that he wouldn't get to finish writing his autobiography if he was killed. Recorder Garlick is recommending all 3 victims for bravery commendations.
An Island Charities minibus was damaged by vandals while it was parked at Shanklin train station. The Ford Transit minibus, owned by John's Club, had its rear windows smashed, sustained damage to the back door, and other windows were spray-painted black, according to British Transport Police. According to the charity, the whole of the front of the bus's wiring had been destroyed. John's Club damaged minibus is the only vehicle that can transport people in wheelchairs, as it's the only bus with a lift fitted. The bus is relied upon by members and people in the community. A spokesperson from John's Club said, due to lack of funds due to COVID, we've not been able to fix this bus yet, as like all other organisations, we're struggling to keep our service going. This is the worst economic time we've ever had to deal with in 27 years of running. If anyone can support us financially or in any other way, we'd appreciate any help in this difficult time. Please call John Phillips on 07702 340 193. The vehicle is currently parked on Gunville Road in Newport.
Tracy is town's new mayor. East Cowes has a new mayor following the departure of Michael Paler. Councillor Tracy Reardon was unanimously elected into the role on Thursday, January 21st. She has served on the town authority since May 2021. Councillor Reardon said, I'm extremely excited to represent the council and community to promote our wonderful town. As a business owner, Secretary of the East Cowes Business Association and Chairman of the East Cowes Community Partnership, I felt the next step would be to become a local councillor. Isle of Wight Councillor for Osborne, Stephen Hendry, and Town Councillor Cameron Palin were among those to congratulate Councillor Reardon.
A former Isle of Wight businessman, now an investor in Ukrainian businesses, said the country's economy was suffering as the prospect of a Russian invasion looms. Russian troops have been stationed at the country's shared border, and intense diplomatic activity has failed to ease tensions. Daniel Williams, originally from the Isle of Wight and now based in Ukraine capital Kiev, is owner of Green 5 Ventures. He said many of his larger projects are completely out of the window, though he isn't seeing panic in daily life. The 45-year-old said, there's not a mass exodus of people, there's not mass panic in the streets, people in daily life aren't doing much different. The economy is the thing that's really seeing an effect here. If the Russians invade, then the economy becomes less of a priority, but that's the one thing that's suffering, the larger infrastructure projects that we're involved in as minority partners. Those are completely out of the window right now. In an article written for Ukraine's English language newspaper, the Kiev Post, economist Pavlo Kuchta warned that the prospect of military conflict would lead to the loss of foreign investment, a damning development for the country's economic future and currency of the hryvnia. Mr. Williams is an investor in 4 eco-friendly businesses across Ukraine and said that as a business owner, the one thing you hate is uncertainty. Mr. Williams acknowledged the normality of daily life in the country's capital, but said he's monitoring concern among his staff. There is a generation thing, he said. The younger people tend to speak Ukrainian and the older people Russian. So people in their 20s have only known Ukraine, whereas people in their 30s and older parents tend to be more pro-Russian. Among the younger people, yes, there is a tension, and as an owner, as a boss, that is definitely something I'm trying to monitor, but the older people are less concerned. The business owner added, it would be silly not to have a plan in place to leave Ukraine.
Could Games baton come to the island? The Commonwealth Games baton could come to the Isle of Wight if Mr. Bob Seeley gets his wish. The island's MP has written to the Board of Regional Planners helping to organise activity around the Commonwealth Games, asking them to consider including the Isle of Wight. In the lead up to the Games, which take place in Birmingham this summer, a baton containing a message from the Queen is being carried across all 72 nations and territories of the Commonwealth. Mr. Seeley said, hosting the Commonwealth Games in England is a big deal for our country, and there's an opportunity for the Isle of Wight to be involved. Then I'm going to grab it with both hands. I want to showcase the island to the world. We have beautiful scenery, iconic landmarks, and a packed calendar of festivals and events to be proud of. The Commonwealth Games is also an opportunity to inspire young people and encourage them into sport. No doubt we will have firm competition, and we may not be successful, but my motto is, if you don't ask, you don't get. Mr. Seeley has also appealed to islanders to nominate baton bearers. Nominations must be submitted by February 14th. To nominate a local hero, go to birmingham2022.com /Queen's Baton -relay /baton bearer -nominations /.
Many island residents have been left frustrated with Royal Mail over delays in the delivery of their mail. Islanders, predominantly in the Ryde and East Cowes areas, have reported lengthy delays and in some cases even a temporary suspension of delivery. One resident said they were lucky to get post once a week, while another said they got a bundle every 3 to 4 days. Among them was Fred Dawson, who said, "First class is a waste of time, as the targets for next day delivery are never met. Daily delivery seems to be a thing of the past." In a letter to the editor, Liam Purdy of Ryde revealed he'd received just 2 deliveries of mail on Belvedere Street since Christmas. He said the sorting office doesn't answer the phone, customer services have more than an hour's waiting time. All I want is our post, please. Royal Mail has apologised to any customers affected by the disruption. The Postal Service says an increase in staff absences, COVID-related self-isolation and resourcing issues have all played a part. Asked why Post is in some cases failing to reach its destination, a spokesperson for the Royal Mail said, "The vast majority of mail is delivered safely and on time. We aim to deliver to all addresses we have mail for 6 days a week. In the local area, we're experiencing some delays to service due to high levels of sickness absence, COVID-related self-isolation and resourcing issues. We apologise to any customers who may have experienced delays to their mail. We've been working hard to get our levels of service back to normal as soon as possible." Royal Mail says anyone who has concerns over the delivery of their mail should contact its customer service team on 03457 740 740 or go via the Royal Mail website at www.royalmail.com.
Secrets of Solent's underwater forest. A unique ancient settlement submerged under Solent off the Isle of Wight has revealed more exciting secrets and has again been featured on the archaeological TV show Digging for Britain. In DNA tests on seabed sediment collected off Baldner, a signal for wheat was picked up, dating 2,000 years earlier than the agricultural grain that was thought to be in the area. Some 8,000 years ago, when people were living there, the site used to be dry land. Now it's covered by 11 metres of water, 1 kilometre east of Yarmouth, in the Solent Maritime Special Area of Conservation. Excavations have been underway since it was first identified as a prehistoric forest in the 1980s. The newest findings from the fast-eroding Mesolithic site, which dates to the Middle Stone Age, includes a preserved oak leaf, animal remains, plants and twigs. The most surprising discovery was that wheat appeared to be present. Previously, it was thought hunter-gatherers did not become farmers until around 2,000 years later. Watch the show on the BBC website.
The Isle of Wight has received nearly £200,000 from the government to help support local businesses impacted by the Omicron variant. The additional restrictions grant is now open for applicants following on from the launch of the government-funded Omicron Hospitality and Leisure Grant, OHLG, on the island. The island has been allocated £192,469 by the government to support businesses severely impacted by the rise of the Omicron variant. Businesses linked to the tourism, hospitality and leisure sector which do not qualify for the grant are encouraged to apply to the Isle of Wight Council for a share of the funding. These could, for example, be operating from business-rated premises, from home, or in a place where they're not the ratepayer, such as shared premises. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans said, "If your business was directly impacted by the Omicron restrictions, my advice is to check the guidance and see if you can apply. It's only a small fund, but we don't want eligible businesses that were impacted to miss out. The applications submitted to the Council online must be submitted by the deadline of 11:59 p.m. on Monday, February 14th. Businesses can apply online for the grant at the Isle of Wight Council's website, where more information and guidance, including eligibility information, is available." So that concludes today's Talking newspaper session, and it's goodbye, good wishes from Howard.
And goodbye from Sinara.
So this is to do with the current In Touch programme and is about retinal vein occlusion, reading the room. There are many types of eye conditions that can cause blindness or low vision, and we often get requests to cover some of them in more detail. In this programme, we're discussing retinal vein occlusion with medical retina consultant Luke Nicholson from Moorfields Eye Hospital. We discuss how the condition affects the eyes, the causes and the treatments. What techniques do you have for reading the room in social situations? Perhaps you listen out for the rustling of clothes or pick up on a hefty exhale when someone is irritated. Well, tonight we speak to blind Australian psychologist Courtney McKee about the kinds of techniques she uses to understand what is happening in a room, both in a work environment and in a more relaxed party environment. Programme presenter is Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, and production coordinator Liz Poole.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, how to read a room when you can't see who's in it and what they're getting up to.
When you're blind or have low vision, you're relying on that main sense of hearing to process multiple channels of information. whereas a sighted person can be looking across the room reading somebody's conversation, whereas we have to only rely on the information that's immediately around us. And there's a lot of uncertainty about somebody giving us information from across the room because it could be for anyone.
Psychologist Courtney McKee is blind but reckons there are plenty of non-visual ways to keep yourself informed. But first, there are many forms of visual impairment, and it's inevitable, I suppose, that the more common conditions get more coverage on In Touch. But listeners quite often ask us about some of the less well-known causes. So tonight we're going to deal head-on with one of your queries, which has recently come in, retinal vein occlusion, or RVO. Well, this is well beyond my pay grade, so we've invited Luke Nicholson, who's a consultant ophthalmologist at Moorfields Eye Hospital and a specialist in medical retina, to help us out. Luke, first of all, retinal vein occlusion, what exactly is it?
So retinal vein occlusion, the arteries bring blood into the eye or into the retina, and the veins get blood out of the eye. So it's pretty much a circulation. And in retinal vein occlusion, there is a narrowing of the veins caused by a thrombus or a blood clot in that position. So what then happens is blood can't get out of the eye and causes problems to the retina. Of course, this thrombus doesn't stay there forever, or the blood clot doesn't stay there forever, but there is a narrowing as a consequence to it. And the problems can vary from very mild problems to very serious problems. It's surprisingly quite common. Of course, in my field, I see patients with it. It's about 1.5% of patients above 60 can get that condition. So it is common in the elderly, but it also happens in young patients as well.
Are there warning signs, Luke?
So it is something that happens very suddenly. It is something that you can wake up with or something that happened during the day. So it's very rapid and very sudden, and it can affect a patient's vision significantly. However, there is the spectrum. So some patients can get it quite mildly and they may not notice it. For example, one eye dominant and it's affecting the less dominant eye. They may not notice it until they close one eye, for example. Or it can actually affect a branch of the retinal vein, which is not where we see out of. So it's an area outside the center, outside the macula. Then patients may not have any symptoms, and it could be an incidental finding with an optician or a diabetic screener. So patients who get the photos taken once a year for diabetes.
Ian Runacres is the listener who contacted us, and he contacted us on behalf of his father, who's recently lost nearly all of his sight in his left eye. And his father is now worried that this may affect his right eye as well. What's the probability of that happening?
In terms of what data we have, for example, a branch retinal vein occlusion, this is affecting a section of the veins in the retina. The chances of having it in the fellow eye is about 1 in 10, or 10%. It sounds high, but it's worth mentioning that it can affect a branch that you don't see out of. So although it's 10%, it's less that actually becomes symptomatic. In terms of a central retinal vein occlusion, so this is quite significant because it affects the vision entirely. The chances of it happening in the other eye is less than 5%. Of course, measures can be taken to reduce that risk. There's a lot of cases where we find no cause specifically, but we have looked at this in big data and found that hypertension, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes are all risk factors, or even glaucoma are risk factors for having retinal vein occlusion. So if a patient comes in who has the diagnosis of retinal vein occlusion, we would want the patient to have the rest of their risk factors screened or assessed. So if there's an undiagnosed high blood pressure, undiagnosed diabetes, it's best to get all that treated or optimized to reduce the probability of fellow eye getting involved.
And are there actually specific treatments that you can give once sight has been lost in one eye? Any treatments which A, could either restore any sight to that one or prevent there being a problem in the other one?
In terms of preventing it in the other eye, there's no direct treatment. So antiplatelet treatments, aspirin, warfarin, anything, blood thinners, for example, have not been shown to prevent it. Of course, if a patient has risk factors, smoking, high blood pressure, etc., and their risk of having cardiovascular events, so things like a stroke or heart attack, is higher, then yes, your GP normally would start a patient on aspirin. But from an eye point of view, there's nothing that's been shown to prevent it in the fellow eye if all the other risk factors are already managed. In terms of treatment for the affected eye, where the vein occlusion is affecting the retina, that's something we can't reverse or treat, sadly. But what we can treat is the consequence of it. So there's two main problems or complications that can happen with a patient with a retinal vein occlusion. One is swelling or edema affecting the center of the vision or the macula. That happens in about 80%, 70 to 80% of patients with retinal vein occlusion, and this can affect the vision even more. Thankfully, we have really good treatments for this. So if someone's got a retinal vein occlusion that's been worsened with swelling at the center, the injections called anti-VEGF injections or steroid injections have been shown to be very effective in getting rid of the swelling and improving a patient's vision. So the success rate is more than 90% of patients who are receiving these injections will experience an improvement, and 1 in 2 will find a big improvement. The only issue is patients may require the injections over a long period, over 2 years or 3 years, repeatedly.
Right. Just one more question. This is on a more sort of practical front. Are there any tips that can help someone actually adapt to the condition? Ian tells us that his dad keeps having knocks at the moment as he tries to navigate. He says his brain hasn't adapted to no sight on the left hand side. Will it adapt eventually, or is there anything else you can suggest to stop him knocking into things?
Yes, I think it's important to rule out any underlying glaucoma, if there is, because glaucoma is a condition that affects our field of vision and we can knock into things if that's affected. And that's been shown to be related to a vein occlusion. But more importantly, if a patient has it in one eye, especially if it affects the dominant eye, there is a tendency to want to close that eye or wear a patch. But we don't tend to recommend that because the brain learns to adapt and develop sort of unconscious measures to cope with that. Despite the central vision being quite blurry, the peripheral vision is in most patients is still preserved, and having both eyes open and not patching it is much better functionally. But in the initial stage, when it's quite serious and it's quite bad, it can be difficult to cope because it's so sudden. The brain takes time to adapt to it. But we find that most patients in time tend to cope and develop measures to cope with that. And they do function perfectly fine with the one very good working eye.
Luke Nicholson, thank you very much indeed. And that point about adaptation is very appropriate to our next item. I mean, it's absolutely understandable that anyone initially losing their sight is going to dwell on the things that they fear they're no longer going to be able to do. Reading, driving are two of the most common fears. But people are often surprised at how quickly people can adapt and just how many alternatives there are to doing things for which you would assume sight was essential. Blind Australian psychologist Courtney McKee has recently been writing about the techniques she uses for what she describes as reading a room, knowing the numbers of people in it, where people are positioned, the mood of a room. Well, I've been talking to Courtney McKee about this, and I asked her first about a phrase she'd used in her article about how important it was to be on good terms with the missing pieces of life. I wondered, what did she mean by that exactly?
Well, I think it's two parts. So as a person with a vision impairment, you are doing without some of the most important information that people use to understand the world around them. And the good terms side of thing is about having realistic expectations about what that means for you and being compassionate towards yourself in relation to what you can do with that information and just making the most of it.
So you mean accept that you're going to have to do this a different way, and the best way to do it is to accept what you haven't got and try and find an alternative?
Yeah, I think if you can come to a place of acceptance, almost like peacefulness with the way that things are, that means that you're not battling double. So you're not only dealing with the challenge of missing that information, but you're also potentially dealing with your response to it, which, you know, could be anxiety, it could be anger, if you can come to a place of acceptance, you're essentially taking away one of those challenges, which is your emotional response. And then you're able to tune in to the information that you do have and do your best with that.
So let's talk about it in sort of hard, practical terms. Give me some examples of the kind of clues that you're looking for to replace the information that sight would give you.
Well, I suppose the main one that we tend to use is auditory information. That includes whatever the ambient cues are, so ambient noise around us, and you can probably hear dogs barking in my background and trucks passing by. So I'm in a reasonably built-up suburban environment. But it's also about the people around us and what we can tell from what we hear from them. So it might be about how they're moving through space, which we can hear in the rustling of their clothing and their interaction with the furniture, the movement on a chair. Even sometimes we can pick up on, this disturbance of air around us. So I would say that the majority of information we pick up is auditory, but we're also aware of olfactory information, and we're also aware of our proprioceptive information. So, the position of our body in space and potentially touch in relation to other people too.
So, you were talking about this in a kind of work situation in the article. The interesting thing is we're doing this interview on Zoom. So in some ways that completely changes the situation. But I guess you're talking about work situations where you're perhaps in a room where there are a lot of other people. So how much information can you get from that? And how important is it that you actually know these things?
Well, I guess when you're in a room in a work environment with a lot of other people, what you're trying to do is demonstrate the expected behaviour, because that can essentially make people more favourable towards your needs. So what you're trying to do is tune into how other people are behaving to find out what those norms are and to match them if it's appropriate for you. Some people like to be, iconoclastic, and they like to step outside of what the average way of behaving is.
I guess what some blind people would say is, I'm not going to pretend to be sighted. People have got to come to terms with the fact that there are things I will do in a different way to them. So, are we saying in a way that you're trying to behave as much like sighted people as you can? Because some people wouldn't accept that that was necessary.
No, and I agree with those people. I don't think if you have a disability that you should be trying to operate according to or conform to, sighted expectations. But I also think it's about relationship. And so the expected behaviour in most environments is the sighted behaviour. But if you're in a group of well-intended or decent people, then they're going to expect that you transgress a little bit or you differ a little bit. Diversity is really important. And as people with disabilities, we represent an important segment of society, and how we operate, all of the workarounds that we employ to do life are important for people to see, because they're human adaptations that represent, innovation and ingenuity and resilience. I'm not expecting people to try and pretend to be something other than what they are. But I still think when you're in a social environment, what you're trying to do is tune yourself to other people so you can experience rapport and belonging, and that you can get the benefits of that group experience or that collegiate experience in a work environment.
Using it in a working environment is one thing, but what about socially? For instance, how much can it be used? How much would you use it, say, at a party where people's behaviour is likely to be far more unpredictable than it would be in a work situation?
Well, I often find parties, there's a lot of noise in the background which scrambles a lot of the information that you can pick up. And as a result of that, you have to tune in very, very carefully to specific things. So I think it's actually almost a matter of using the ability to block out information more so than anything else. So a selective attention. So you're identifying a particular person that's sitting close to you that you're listening to.
And we've all had the experience at a party of thinking we're talking to someone who's actually looking over our shoulder to see who else there is in the room that's more interesting than we are.
Yeah, and I think also it's about when you're blind or have low vision, you're relying on that main sense of hearing to process multiple channels of information, whereas a sighted person can be looking across the room, reading somebody's conversation, reading lips or whatever, and having somebody gesture at them about, I'm ready to go now, pack up and move on. Whereas we have to only rely on the information that's immediately around us. And there's a lot of uncertainty about somebody giving us information from across the room because it could be for anyone. So, those kinds of environments, they are incredibly tricky. And I wouldn't profess to be very good at handling really dynamic, unpredictable environments myself. Again, it comes back to just doing the best you can.
Yeah. Could you end up spending so much time on this sort of thing that you miss out on living in the moment yourself?
Well, I think listening is about paying attention. Mindfulness is about being in the moment. And really what we're talking about is tuning in to what's happening right now and being present with people and giving them the space to express themselves and being a really good sounding board for them. So there are skills associated with that. Like in counselling, there's a set of skills called micro-counselling skills, and they involve things like asking open and closed questions, paraphrasing, using minimal encourages. Your interviewing strategy is a really good example of giving me space to talk. So, there are skills and you can get better if you practice them, but I think ultimately what it comes down to is one person being authentic, interacting with another person, being their authentic self. And that only really works if you are completely present in the moment.
Courtney McKee, thank you very much. And we'd like to hear about your own techniques for reading a room. Something else we'd like to hear from you about is a recent announcement from the Department for Transport that they want train companies to cut down on what they're describing as banal and unnecessary announcements and instructions. They say redundant messages will be identified and removed in the coming months. They do say they'll retain important safety announcements and work with accessibility groups to ensure passengers get essential information. But we've already heard from one listener, Richard Foster from Aberdeen, who fears that in the enthusiasm for a bonfire of announcements, vital messages for visually impaired passengers might get binned as well. He says, yet again, selfish and ignorant people are trying to get these announcements removed because they find them annoying. As a totally blind traveller, they are for me quite literally a lifesaver. Their importance needs to be widely publicised. Well, that's what we've done. So if you notice a lessening of announcements of forthcoming stations, which side of the train to exit from, do let us know. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338 or contact our website bbc.co.uk/in touch, from where you can also download tonight's and previous editions of the programme. That's it from me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers John Cole and Philip Halliwell. Goodbye.
And the scaffolding news. In Ryde area, 118A Ryde Dental Surgery in the High Street, number 25 on the Esplanade, the Star Pub, 40 High Street, and there will be skips in 26 Quarry Road, 75 High Street, Buccaneers Ferry Road in Seaview, at the Community Shop, West Street, Seaview, OS, Duchy View, Sherburn Street at Bembridge. In the freshwater area, outside Double Dragon, 7 Tennyson Road. In Newport, Guildhall in the High Street, the Old Mill at St Cross Lane, the Man in the Moon, 16 to 17 St James's Street, and at 54 High Street in Carisbrooke. And in the Cowes area, outside Jersey Cottage, on Market Hill from Sun Hill, and the old NatWest Bank in 104 High Street.